in telling the story of the Carolina Hurricanes, it's a story about the Hartford Whalers. The Hartford Whalers. When I started watching hockey, that's what it was. That's Davey Keon playing for the Hartford Whalers. That's what it was. Anyways, excuse me. But it's funny because as a kid, the team with the whale on its jersey seemed to be a team I would want to cheer for. And I did early on. I like that their jerseys were green. I mean, come on, I'm a little kid, right? So, who the players are doesn't matter as much to me. But I didn't know who Davey Keon was. I just knew he looked angry in hockey cards. He looked ready to punch people and scream and yell. This is about the merger of the NHL and WHA. From its inception in 1972, the World Hockey Association proved effective as a viable alternative to the NHL. The promise of more lucrative salaries was the fledgling league's key selling point. Bobby Hull became the WHA's first big-name superstar, lending credibility to the NHL rivals. But the league was plagued with instability and insolvent franchises. Several teams struggled to meet its payroll. Toronto, Ottawa, Minnesota, Los Angeles, New York, and a host of other cities lost their clubs. When Ziegler replaced Clarence Campbell as NHL president in 1977, he began spearheading a movement for a merger with the WHA. The ongoing feud between the two leagues was not only costing millions of dollars, but polarizing the pool of talent of hockey's best players. By August 1977, an agreement was in place for the NHL to admit 6 NHL teams: Edmonton, New England, Quebec, Winnipeg, Cincinnati, and Houston. I'll let that sink in for a sec. Let that sink in. Cincinnati and Houston were that close to being in the NHL. But a vote among the league's governors fell one short of the three-quarters majority required for ratification. The WHA played another full season before the issue was revisited in March 1979. 13 of 17 votes in favor of the merger were needed. But again, that proposal was defeated by a single vote. The dissenting clubs were Boston, Los Angeles, Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. Leafs owner Harold Ballard, a staunch opponent of the merger, didn't hide his merriment. "I feel so elated. It's just like the North beating the South in the Civil War," he said. The public in Edmonton, Quebec, and Winnipeg reacted with outrage when word leaked out that Montreal and Vancouver voted against the merger. The target of angst was Molson Breweries, the owner of the Canadiens. The company was swiftly boycotted in the prospective NHL cities. An anonymous bomb threat was made to the Molson Brewery in Quebec City. And a bullet was fired through the window of a Molson plant in Winnipeg. We got a Molson plant going up here. I guess I better be careful. 2 weeks later, in the wake of a backlash, Montreal and Vancouver relented. On March 22nd, the NHL voted to admit Edmonton, Hartford, Quebec, and Winnipeg. Each of the 4 teams paid $6 million in expansion fees. Each new franchise was permitted to protect 2 skaters and 2 goaltenders, and the Oilers is expected protected the cornerstone of their franchise, 18-year-old Wayne Gretzky. The last WHA game was played on May 20th, 1979, when Winnipeg defeated Edmonton in the 6th and deciding game of the Avco Cup Finals. Dave Semenko, who became one of Gretzky's bodyguard in the NHL, scored the last ever goal in the league. So that's interesting. And they came into the season, their first season, and they didn't do badly. They got 73 points their first year. They lost in the preliminary round, which is the first round. And then they missed the playoffs for the next 5 years. With 60, 60, 45, 66, and 69 points, those 5 seasons. So it's an interesting history in Hartford. They had 84 points in 1986 to make the playoffs and lost in the division final. And then they lost in the first round for the next 6 seasons. Hartford, that was them. And towards the end of their existence, they were an also-ran who could get close to 500, played relatively well, but just didn't quite have it. And I really think that the turning point for Hartford was when they traded Ron Francis, and was it Jim Johnson? And they got back John Cullen and Zarley Zalapski. I'm thinking that's what the trade was. People are going to go look now. Let me go take a look before anybody, gets all mad. It's all Samuelson. Yeah, people would definitely. That's what it was. Whalers trade Francis to Penguins with Ulf Samuelson and Grant Jennings for John Cullen, Zarley Zalapski, and Jeff Parker. I knew it was one-sided. I knew it was one of those trades you look at and you say, wow, this is bad. And that's bad. That's a bad deal. And that, in my eyes, was the end of the Hartford Whalers. And then in 1990, I want to say 1997, the Hartford Whalers get moved. And they become these guys. When that went down, I was not happy, which continues a theme. Now, I know the Hartford Whalers' home stadium was basically inside a mall. It was not well attended. They couldn't compete with the salaries that the bigger teams were putting out there. And the Hartford Whalers were a floundering franchise. Truly. Hartford, honestly, Hartford is a team I have great affection for, still. And it made it really hard to watch them go to Carolina. Now, the Hurricanes have been bad for the last 7 years. They've missed 9 out of the last 10 years in the playoffs. 9 playoffs in 10 years is a better way of phrasing that. They did win the Stanley Cup in 2006. But it has been an unmitigated disaster of a team outside of that one season. The odd thing is, it's Ron Francis calling the shots now. Now, right now, there are reasons to be happy as a fan of Carolina. I mean, you've got Ron Francis at the helm. You've got Aho coming up. And he looks to be a keeper, definitely. You've got Noah Hannafin on the blue line, and he is a keeper. And let's see, leaders, career. And there is something to be said for having Ron Francis with the team, because Ron Francis played the most games for Carolina with 1,186. Scored the most points with 1,175. Second place is Eric Stahl with 715 points. Second place in games is Glenn Wesley with 913. Glenn Wesley had a nice, long career in the NHL. Eric Stahl, 909 games. Kevin Dineen, 708. Rod Brindamore, 694. And when they won the Cup in 2006, I was happy for Brindamore. He had really proven himself over the years, and he just got better as he got older, which is strange. He seemed to deny that aging was a thing. He refused to do it. And I greatly respect what he did. Let's see, anybody odd. 8th in games played is Cam Ward with 569. So a goaltender is 8th on their games played list. Adam Burt is 7th with 626. Jeff O'Neill is 6th with 673. Tim Gleason is 10th with 546. Goals, of course, is Francis with 382, then Eric Stahl with 322, Kevin Dineen 250, Blaine Stoughton, who was one of my favorite players back in the early 80s, 219, Jeff O'Neill 198, Jeff Sanderson 196 before he sucked, Pat Verbeek 192, one of my favorite players, Sylvain Turgeon, who was never confused with Pierre Turgeon, 178. Rod Brindamore, 174. And then Eric Cole, 10th with 168. Assists, it's usual suspects here. Ron Francis with 793. Eric Stahl with 453. Rod Brindamore, 299. Kevin Dineen, 294. Andrew Castles, 253. Loved Andrew Castles. He should have stayed in Vancouver longer. You guys in Calgary were lucky that you got him. Jeff O'Neill, 218. Ray Whitney, 215. Pat Verbeek, 211. Sammy Kapanen, 203. And then Dave Babich. Dave Babich shows up again. 196. Dave Babich, one of my favorite players, too. Points. Nothing really that stands out here. Ray Ferraro at 351 is in 10th place. What's odd is Ray Ferraro doesn't make top 10 in goals or top 10 in assists, and yet he's top 10 in points. So that's unusual. That is very unusual. Power play goals. Ron Francis is number 1 with 132. Eric Stahl's next with 105. Then Pat Verbeek with 73. Kevin Dineen, 71. Sylvain Turgeon, 68. Jeff O'Neill, 64. Jeff Sanderson, 62 before he sucked. Rod Brindamore, 60. Ray Ferraro, 59. And Blaine Stoughton, 56. Shorthanded goals. Eric Stahl's number 1 with 16. Then Dave Tippett with 11. Rod Brindamore with 10. Kevin Adams, Chad LaRose, Stuart Gavin, and Eric Cole are tied with 8. And then tied with 7 are Murray Craven, Keith Primo, Paul Ranheim, Kevin Dineen, and Ron Francis. So that's an interesting little piece of information. Wins. Cam Ward is far and above and beyond with 270. This list gets sad fast. Archer Survey is number 2 with 130. Mike Liutz, 3rd with 116. Then Sean Burke with 107. That really doesn't reflect how well Sean Burke played for Hartford. Sean Burke really kept them in games and made them respectable. Sean Burke wasn't known as a great guy off the ice necessarily. I'm not going to get into that here. But there were a lot of things said at the time. And that's probably held back his standing in terms of where he was, and from his career was almost 20 years long. He was a pretty damn good goaltender, but 107 wins for Hartford was good. Then Peter Sidorkovic, 71, Polish goalie, you gotta love the guy. Greg Millen, 62, no. Steve Weeks with 40 is at number 7. Then Kevin Weeks with 39. Then Martin Gerber with 38 is 9th. Gerber, a goaltender I could never understand why nobody gave him a chance. John Garrett is number 10 on their wins list with 36. John Garrett. That's how sad Carolina's history really, really is. And save percentage, I don't need to get into that. That's a sad, sad list. Shutouts. This is a sad list too, actually. Cam Ward's number 1 with 23 shutouts, but Artur Zerbe is right behind him with 20. Mike Liut has 13. Kevin Weeks and Sean Burke had 11. They're tied for 4th. 6th is Peter Sidorkovic with 8. Then Trevor Kidd with 5. Greg Millen and Steve Weeks tied with 4. Then tied for 10th place are Martin Gerber, Justin Peters, and Kay Whitmore with 3. I don't know where to go with that. Carolina, of the 4 WHA teams, I don't know which one I would qualify as weaker between them and Arizona. I know that moving changes everything, but it's still the same franchise. It's got that same history. Um, I think I would put Carolina's at this point. I'd put Carolina ahead of the then Winnipeg Jets, now Arizona Coyotes, only because of that Stanley Cup victory. But it's tough because for their entire time in the NHL, they've had 1,169 wins, 1,302 losses, 263 ties, and 129 overtime losses. So they're a below 500 team. Their record for most points was 112, and that was the year they won the Cup. They had 52 wins that year. Their most losses, 82-83, they had 54 losses. The most goals they had was an 85-86, 332. Most goals against was an 82-83. They had 403 goals against. Think about that for a second. That's 5 goals against a game because that's 80-game schedule. Most seasons, Ron Francis had 16. Most penalty minutes in a career, Kevin Dineen had 1,439. The most penalty minutes they had in a season as a team was 92-93. They had 2,354 penalty minutes, which is a lot. Rookie points record, Sylvain Turgeon was 72. Strange that Turgeon still has that record, even now. Most points right wing in a season, Blaine Stoughton at 79-80 had 100 points. Most points by a center, Mike Rogers with 105, and he had that in 79-80 and 80-81. And then I think he got moved right after that. But they're an interesting team in that right now they have Noah Hannafin. They have a lot of good young players. It's a matter of, do they gel? Do they work together? And it's not something that I have an answer to right now. Do I cheer for Carolina? Not like I did Hartford. Not anywhere near like I did Hartford. The Hartford Whalers were one of my favorites, especially towards the end of their time in the NHL, because I really wanted them to succeed. And again, much like Quebec, when they went to Colorado, I had the misfortune of watching the organization win a Stanley Cup without their original fan base getting to participate in it. The difference between Quebec and Winnipeg, though, is fan support. In Quebec, it was unwavering, and in Hartford, it was really wavering. I remember when Winnipeg, Quebec, and Hartford moved. They asked Gary Bettman, what's the problem in the NHL? And he said it has 3 letters, WHA. And you could almost hear from thousands of miles from Edmonton, you could almost hear Edmonton fans freaking out. And I really think that at the time that Hartford got moved to Carolina, I think there was at least an idea in the NHL head offices of, okay, now Edmonton is the last one left, and we may have to look at moving Edmonton. Carolina's the number 1 franchise right now in terms of what people think needs to move. And, that was Arizona. Now it seems to be Carolina. My opinion on it is simply, I'd like to see the organization stable. It can't be easy as a player in Carolina, seeing arenas that aren't full and hearing off ice stuff that's going on. And then the on ice product isn't great either. So I have full respect for anybody who plays in Carolina, anybody who's signed as a free agent for Carolina, anybody who believes in Carolina. I have full respect for them as players. I'll be very interested to see what happens as this season rolls along. I mean, everybody's, still in a position to contend. Nobody's really out of it. But Carolina is close. their pickups in the offseason this past summer, were not awe-inspiring. As a team, I don't know. I don't think they have the goaltending to do it. I don't think they have the depth up front to do it. Noah Hannafin was a steal at the draft, but they need a lot of steals. They need a lot of Sebastian Ahos. One isn't enough. They're going to need a lot of work. But on that term, or in that case, Aho is in my eyes definitely worth it. Hannafin is worth it. I think if you look at futures, Carolina's is bright, but how bright? How many of these guys need to become what they're at their ceiling in order for Carolina to succeed? I was asked in a stream tonight about what I thought about Jeff Skinner. Jeff Skinner's a very good player. Jeff Skinner is a 25 goal player, maybe 30. Not a superstar, not a guy that I think carries a franchise, but very good, ideally secondary scoring threat. Ideally a guy you want to take the pressure off of him. And same with Lee Stempniak, excellent secondary scoring threat. There isn't really anybody in Carolina to look at and say, okay, that's a primary scoring threat. Jordan Staal is not it. And there needs to be some rapid change for this team to get better. But that being said, I for some reason still have faith in Ron Francis because of what I saw of Ron Francis when he was a player, and he's one of the smartest players I ever saw play hockey. And as much as I hated Ulf Samuelsson, and my hate was supreme for him, and then what he did to Neely was just unforgivable. But that being said, he was one of the best defensemen at the time, defensive defensemen. And maybe Carolina is going to be able to do something now with the defensive defensemen they have. But anyways, that's really all that I have on Carolina. And I know most of this has been sort of a Hartford love fest, so to speak. But that's what I remember more growing up than anything, is them as the Hartford Whalers. That's why I've got Whalers jerseys. Like this one here, this is the blue one they wore the last few years in the NHL. I love this jersey. I love the green one too. Like there is no bad Whalers jersey. And, you know, I would have the white one if it wasn't for the fact that white hockey jerseys attract stains like crazy. But I'd have it. This flimsy Carolina jersey is a youth large, extra large. I can wear youth large, extra large. It's just not cool. Youth jerseys 10, 15 years ago were basically constructed exactly the same as the adult jerseys, just they were smaller. Now they're actually constructed differently. They're actually cheaper. And it's really obvious when somebody's wearing a youth jersey rather than an NHL jersey for adults. So not feeling that at all. Anyways, thanks for watching. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're passing through. And tomorrow I get to tackle Chicago would be next, right? Please don't let it be Chicago. You know, I have these bad flashbacks of, yeah, it's Chicago. Oh. So yesterday I relive terrifying memories as a Canucks fan against Calgary. Today it's remembering how part of my childhood died when the Hartford Whalers got moved. Next up, Chicago. I'm going to need alcohol for the next video. That being said, all kidding aside, if you're a Hurricanes fan and you're passing through, you are one of the brave and one of the few, and you know, keep up the good fight and keep up the faith. We'll see what happens. It's probably crunch time for Carolina, and I hope they don't move. Not because I don't want to see a team in Quebec, which is where they would likely move to, but because it sucks seeing a team move. Because there are fans. There are always fans in any city that a team leaves. And it sucks for them. So, anyways, thanks for watching, and I will continue this series tomorrow, and I'll be doing a prediction video tomorrow as well, so stay tuned. This is being recorded November 1st, so if you're tuning in much later than that, go look at other content, hang out, stick around. Thanks for watching.